Okay, so with the R6 Esports World Cup starting in around 2 weeks, I wanted to quickly make a fun little predictions video. There's no like stakes for this one. There's no like free battle pass at on the line if you get correct predictions or anything on Ubisoft's website. I just wanted to do this for fun because I love the esport. So let's just quickly go over the groups. So for Group A, we have BDS Cruelty, SSG, W7M, Luminosity, Bliss, PSG Talon, and Liquid. And then for Group B, we have DZ, GK, ITB, Furia, Wolves, Bleed, Scars, and FaZe. So if we head over to Group A, for our first match, we have BDS and Cruelty. I think everybody knows that Cruelty are very bad recently in Element 3. With the same roster that they're taking to the Esports World Cup, they were losing to Tier 2 NA teams. So, BDS, you better not troll this, because this is very trollable still. There's no way, in no world, though, do I see Cruelty winning this game. Now for SSG W7M, SSG just recently added Benja Master. W7M made no changes after missing the major stage one, even though W7M were one of my favorite teams to make the major. They did not end up going, but I do think, even though they didn't make that major, I do think their team is very good and very talented, similar to SSG's, and I definitely think this will be a barn burner of a match. Definitely a lot of questions still surrounding SSG's consistency on land, because they bombed out in Manchester uh, after I thought they would do pretty well. So for that reason, even though they changed out Iconic for Benja, and Iconic was definitely their worst performer on SSG, and hopefully he has a successful surgery if he hasn't had it already. Um, but for now, SSG thought it'd just be better to go in a new direction with Benja, but this SSG are untested on a LAN environment similar to this W7M team, even though the Brazil league is LAN. So not entirely, but internationally, this W7M team has not played a LAN event together yet, while the majority of this SSG team has. And Benja himself has been to plenty of LANs with G2 and previously Heroic. So I definitely think I'm going to have W7M take this game in a close like 2-1 here. But I definitely could see SSG also taking that match. Now Luminosity versus Bliss. This is a weird one. Bliss are like the biggest wildcard, or not Bliss. Luminosity are probably the biggest wildcard of this tournament for me. I feel like some of the NA fans may be reminiscing after Beast Coast, praying for like another Beast Coast type run, but I don't think this is exactly going to be the same, because that Beast Coast team had a lot of experience, while this Luminosity team does not. Now, however, this Bliss team is by far much more experienced as a team together, and on LAN as well. They have always choked when it matters most. Even when they're uh, far ahead, they've never been able to capture that top 8 spot. And Luminosity are definitely a very passionate, hungry team looking to prove themselves, and that showed in the close qualifiers of this event. While Bliss definitely had some struggles in the close qualifiers, um, so I think I'm actually going to have Luminosity win this game, even with Bliss's recent head coaching change where they picked up Titan from G2. I don't know what to think about them now, because I've seen the same team just fail get to the precipice and then fail just before reaching the zenith. So I am just very unsure about their consistency. So I'm gonna have Luminosity win this game for now. I'm gonna predict Luminosity to win this game. Again, a game that could definitely go the other way around. Now for PSG Talon and Liquid, this is again similar to Manchester, where it's like PSG Talon are just kind of happy to be here, get more experience with their new roster changes, and if they do well, they do well. If they don't do well, then they've at least learned if a lot, because it's like if they lose, but they learn, it's a success. If they win, even if they don't like win the grand final, if they make the final but don't win it, even if they go that far, it's still like, they learn. So there's only really positives for this PSG Talon this event, really, no matter what happens. And Liquid realistically should not be losing to PSG Talon. They're kind of trolling if they do, but definitely PSG Talon not a team to sleep on. So now for the second round of matches, starting with BDS W7M. BDS are after the start of the 2024 circuit. Definitely looking like one of the best teams in the world right now. Certainly the best team in Europe, and I expect that to continue. I definitely think this could be a close match, and W7M definitely could win this. They have the talent, but for now, I'm gonna have BDS winning this. They have just looked so good for the 2024 circuit so far, and W7M have looked good, but not as good as BDS have. So I'm going to have BDS go to the playoffs 2-0, and then W7M drop to lower. Now for Liquid versus Luminosity, again, Luminosity, very hungry team. Definitely could surprise Liquid, but again, realistically, Liquid should not be losing to an inexperienced team like Luminosity. And Liquid have also continued to look better and better after their results in Manchester, where I thought Liquid in Manchester would make top 8, but I didn't think they'd get past that point. But they surprised me, and they beat Furia to make top 4 in Manchester. So they definitely look better in Manchester. Not amazing. Beast Coast definitely showed out that event and just stepped on everyone for the most part, besides BDS, really. And Liquid should be winning that game on paper, which means Luminosity would drop to lower bracket. Now SSG versus Cruelty. Let's be real, SSG, you're trolling if you don't win this game. Cruelty to the airport. And now for PSG Talon versus Bliss, an APAC matchup. One of them will go home, one of them will stay for another match at least. This is a weird one. This is a very hard one to call, because something interesting about this too. If this matchup happens, it's like a battle of the two previous staff of G2, with Fabian on PSG Talon and Titan now with Bliss. And player for player, I definitely think it's a pretty even matchup. Some players with PSG Talon I think are better than some of the players on Bliss, and some of the players on Bliss are better than some of the players I think on PSG Talon. This one is just really hard to call. But honestly, I think if this is the match that happens, I think PSG Talon can pull this one off, and that means Bliss will sadly go home, even though I think Bliss are a way better team than Cruelty are, and would absolutely run the LATAM region if they went there. But yeah, so now for the last round of the lower bracket for Group A, we would have SSG versus Luminosity, NA versus NA, and then we have W7M versus PSG Talon. A very interesting matchup here. Luminosity did make it to this tournament through the upper bracket of the close qualifiers, where SSG had to go through lower. So currently, if we're just going off of that sample size, you could say Luminosity are the better team, but I definitely think SSG player wise, are better, and they should be able to pull this one out. And I definitely think like they have SSG have like one of the best strategic minds in the game, with call out on the team. So SSG, I expect SSG to win versus Luminosity. I don't, but it definitely could again go the other way around, where Luminosity continue their hot streak of uh, winning against NA teams specifically. But for now, I'm going to take SSG winning that game. Now, W7M versus PSG Talon. This would definitely be like a big upset game. If W7M are ill prepared and get lazy, they could definitely. This could be a match that they troll. But W7M, they should be winning this game. Nobody really expects PSG Talon to be a top contender yet. So, but I expect them to start to get there by the start of the 2025 circuit. PSG Talon are definitely going to be a team to watch out for next year, but I don't think it's their time yet. So from Group A, I'm going to have BDS, Liquid, SSG, and W7M making playoffs through Group A, and then Cruelty, Bliss, Luminosity, and PSG Talon are headed back to the airport. Now, for Group B, we are going to have for our first match Dark Zero versus Geek A. This kind of is very similar to actually BDS versus Cruelty game, where it's like one of the best team from the region versus technically the best team from the region again, because Cruelty are the best team from their region and Geeky are the best team from their region. But is their region good? I don't really think so. So, and Geeky, kind of like Cruelty, were like one of the worst teams in Manchester, and even though they made the change of Blaz left for G2 and they picked up Frenchie from Ents, I definitely don't think that'll help Geeky that much beat a team like Dark Zero. And this is again kind of like that BDS Cruelty matchup. Dark Zero are like trolling if they do not win this match. So, but Geeky are definitely going to be like crowd favorites this game, and I'm not sure how. I don't think crowd is really a thing that affects DZ too much, but it could play a factor. So that is something to watch out for. And now this is an interesting game in ITB versus Furia. Now I'll say this: I definitely think for the EU teams, there's a pretty big gap between BDS and the rest of the European teams in Europe right now. I think BDS are like way better than the rest of the teams in Europe. Not that ITB or Wolves are bad by any means, but I just don't think they're on that level that BDS are on. Furia have definitely been slipping as of recently, ever since really ever since the start of the 2024 circuit. They've still been very good. They just haven't been they haven't been the best team in the world in 2024. So, but I do think Furia definitely are still better than ITB, and Furia should be winning this game versus DZ. But this could be a pretty big. You could consider it an upset. It definitely is really, because you look at the players on both these teams, and if you look at the results from last year for these two teams, and Furia won everything, while ITB never made a single land. But ITB have been much better this year. They made both lands so far. So definitely a team you cannot sleep on them. But ITB were a team that I actually thought would make it out of the Manchester major group Swiss stage and go through to playoffs, through the top 8, but they didn't. They were worse than I thought they were, and again, they're a team that I just need to see more from to start predicting them to win more games. Now, Wolves versus Bleed. This is a matchup I believe we've seen before, or or I might be thinking Bliss versus Wolves. Actually, I think it's Bliss and Wolves who always play each other, and then Bleed and SSG who always play each other. So this is huge for Bleed because they're not in the same group as SSG. Um, Wolves are also a very hard team to predict. They have two players who I'm not really sure what they're gonna do with them, with Asa and Lasmu, I believe that's their names. Um, I'm not really sure what Wolves plan on doing with them after this event. If they're going to keep them as like their new two new players to the roster, or they're going to just stay as subs for this event because they are going to this event for Wolves. So I'm assuming if Wolves do well at this tournament, I think that they could definitely become the two new additions to Wolves. But for now, for all I know, they're still just temporary players. But definitely a team players you don't want to sleep on. They were both quite good in the qualifier for Wolves, and of course they helped them qualify to this tournament against a lot of other uh, European teams who are looking to qualify, like G2 and Secret and Fnatic and VP. So and then Bleed are definitely looking to make a splash into top 8 for the first time too, with the addition of Leader after Ashley left for mandatory military service, and they added Linda as part of the staff as well to help Julio. And I definitely think this is a game where if Wolves are asleep at the wheel, then Bleed could definitely win this, especially like Reaps. Reaps has definitely been like one of the best players in the world for the past year so far. He has been, he was just lights out at Manchester, even though the rest of his team wasn't. So all Bleed I think really need to do to make a top 8 at an event is, of course, Reaps needs to be on, and the rest of the team just they need to help him more, because in Manchester it was a big problem. It was like Reaps was killing everyone, and the rest of the team was kind of struggling, especially against like the better teams. They would be able to beat all the teams that were definitely like worse than them, but as soon as they played a team that was on another level or on a similar level to them, they just could never close any games out. So kind of like Bliss, where they started off 2-0 in Manchester, and then they fell off to 2-3 and did not qualify. So I definitely think this is a matchup that could go either ways. But I definitely, personally, I also want to see Bleed win this game just because I think they're fun to watch. And now, Vase versus Scars, best team in Brazil versus best team in Japan. But FaZe is just, even though they were definitely like had a very disappointing result against Beast Coast of Manchester, FaZe, you're trolling if you don't win this game. So I'm sorry, Scars, but down to the lower bracket you go. So now for DZ versus Furia. This is going to be, if this is the game that happens, I am very excited for this one. Very hard to predict. Dark Zero have definitely looked even better post Manchester Major, while Furia have definitely just been kind of coasting. They've been coasting on just like their talent as a team and their teamwork, even though they haven't been playing as well as they were last year. So this is a very hard one to call, but I do think Dark Zero. Plus, I also kind of want to see Dark Zero win this game. It'd be a big game for them. But but it's not just because of like bias. I definitely think Dark Zero could absolutely take that game, this game versus Furia, if this is what happens. As I'm not sure how much I can trust Furia to be as consistent as they were last year. So for that reason, I'm going to have Furia go to the lower bracket, and then Dark Zero go 2-0. But again, this isn't one of those games where you could easily just flip it around and be like, oh yeah, that you could expect that. Like, this is a very hard match to call. Now, FaZe versus Bleed. Bleed, realistically, they definitely, on paper, they're a better roster than they were in Manchester. But FaZe again, as long as they're not like trolling, FaZe should be winning this game, which means Bleed goes to lower bracket. For GK versus ITB, this is kind of just like the cruelty situation again, where it's like I don't think GK are very good at all, even if they have like home crowd advantage, and so that means GK to the airport, and then again, I just don't think Scars are really ready yet. Still, I don't think Scars are horrible. Nowhere near. I don't think the two teams that I think this in this event are like truly bad are GK and Cruelty. None of the rest I think are like horrible. Scars have been competitive before, even though they never really gone very far in many events. But they have been able to stay competitive. But I still think Wolves, like they should be winning this game. Just like player for player, Wolves are better. Um, so and Wolves have the support staff to back them as well, if they needs to be. But for a team like Scars, I mean, what Wolves players are when you have players that are better just player for player, all you need to do is just play your defaults, and if your players are better player for player, you'll just win. So and I think that's how a lot of like teams should take matches against opponents that you would consider weaker. If you know your players are better player for player, play your defaults and you should just win. You don't need to try anything weird or fancy to win games like that. So now for the last matches of the lower bracket to confirm the other two teams to playoffs through Group B, you're going to have Bleed and ITB, and then Fury and Wolves. Bleed versus ITB, this is I mean, both these matches are actually very hard to call. I think that ITB, they should win this game, but this is again where it's like we could have a Reaps masterclass, and he just like absolutely demolishes ITB. So but ITB, they should be winning this game. Though I don't, they're not the team that I want to see winning this game if this happens. I really want to see Bleed make a main stage for once in Siege. I don't know when their time will be. I hope it's this time, but just based off of off of previous choking results, I just can't predict them to make main stage until I see them do it. Then I can be like, oh, well, now that they made main stage, then I can definitely see them doing it again. But all I've seen Bleed do is be this close to making main stage, and then fail every single time. So for that reason, I'm gonna have Bleed go to the airport. Now Wolves versus Furia. This is a kind of a revenge match from SI almost, where Wolves sent Furia down to the lower bracket immediately in playoffs. Even though of course Furia then W7M won the whole thing. But Wolves, the last time these two teams played, I believe, I think they only played each other at SI that one time, and it was the Wolves won a extremely close game, and of course Wolves were a different team then though. Now they had Shinka and Bibu in that match. Now they have Lasmu and Asa, and I definitely think this is the game where the boys on Furia get back and send Wolves back to France. One thing I did forget to check: these games should be best of 3. I actually am uncertain if they are. Elimination games are best of 3. All games except elimination games are best of 1. So that means so these that does change some things, but I definitely think I'm going to keep the predictions the same, because that means all the upper bracket games will just be straight best of 1s, while all of these games will be best of 3s down here. So all the losers bracket matches are just best of 3s. All the upper bracket matches are best of 1s if this is correct. It's a shame that the playoff qualification matches are not best of threes, though. I really think they should be. For playoffs, they are all best of threes, of course. This is not playoffs. This is a group stage. So if this is a best of one, actually, if then things could definitely swing other ways, especially for the more unpredictable matches like Bleed and Wolves and SSG and W7M, because in that situation it kind of comes down to who gets their map, really. But I'm gonna stick with what I got. It makes sense in my mind. Um, they are the teams that in my mind that just on paper that are the teams that should go through if all goes well for them. And yeah, I think that is it. They haven't announced the talent or anything yet. So yeah, anyways, again, if you watched through this whole thing, thank you for watching. And if you again have any comments or criticism or things you enjoyed, feel free to comment on it. And if you did enjoy this, do feel free to like or subscribe. It is completely optional. But yeah, anyways, have a good night.